All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So what's our first word here? All right, we have lamed, right? Pointed cholem with aleph. L-O, low. Low. All right, what about this next word here? All right, so we have a yud, right? And it's pointed with what? Kamatz, right? The mateg, this line next to it, lets us know that we're going to pronounce this like an A. So we have ya. Then we have the letter dalet. Okay, you see that little hump on the back? So, and so now we've got a dalet, and it's got a vocal shava because we're following a long duration vowel point. So day, right? Ya day. And then we have ayin. That's a silent letter, right? And it's followed by a wa pointed shuruk. So what we can do here is we're going to we're going to sweep from the E sound to this U sound. So deu, right? So we have ya deu, ya deu. Do what now? That's a deu, not a deu. All right. So ya deu. Ya deu. I'll put two O's there so that'd be easier for folks. All right, yeah, deu. All right, so what about the next word? Velo, right? We have the same lamed and kamatz and aleph right here. See, we got those, but we've got to start the word. We're starting the word off with a wa, and it's pointed with a vocal shava. And it's vocal. You know, we talk about vocal and silent shavas, right? So a vocal shava gives a quick E sound, and a silent shava, all it does is close the syllable. But we know that there's a bunch of different rules for whether is this silent, is it is it silent, is it vocal? And a lot of us have been doing this for a while, so we just kind of take it for granted. Hey, oh yeah, that one's silent, that one's vocal, blah 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 blah. If Sister Tina, I sent you that packet this morning. If you look in there, I believe that shva is on page number either 6 or 7, and it will explain all the different rules that are in there concerning that little mark right there. All right, so we have a wa or a V sound here with a quick E. Ve. And then, of course, we know lamed pointed, cholem with aleph, lo. All right, so velo. So ve, lo. All right, so lo yadeu velo. What's our next word? All right, so we have a yud, right? Y sound pointed with kamatz, right? Ya. Then we have the letter veit, and it's pointed kirik yod. So v, e, right? V. So ya v. Then we have the letter nun, and it's followed by a wa pointed shuruk, so it gets a u sound, right? So that becomes nu. So we have yavinu, 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 velo yavinu. All right, so what's our next word? Okay, that's fine. I can do that. I've been admonished to put two O's instead of a U, since that's what we did before. So, doesn't matter to me. Whatever's easiest. All right, so what's our next word here? So we have the letter bait, right? So this one sounds like a V because there's no dot inside. But this one sounds like a B because there is a dot inside. That dot is called a dagesh. That's covered in that paper as well. Okay, so this is the letter bait. It makes a B sound. So it's a bait, and then we have patak, which is short duration A. So ba. Then we have the letter chet, right? Look right here. There's no separation. So with no separation, we know we're going to pronounce it as CH. And then it's set as chatef patak, right? So short A as well. So we have bacha, bacha. Then we have the letter sheen, right? We know it's sheen because we have this little indicator mark on the top, and it's over the right-hand side. So that's going to make an SH sound. If it doesn't have it on the right and it has it over here on the left, it makes an S sound. But since it's over here on the right, it's going to make SH, right? And then we have tsere, which is a long duration what? E type vowel, right? So EH. So we have bacha she. Then we have a chaf, chaf, and it's pointed kamatz hey, ch, a, cha, right? So we have bahashecha. All right, ba. Ba, cha, shecha. Bachashecha. All right, what's our next word? All right, so we have the yud again, a Y sound, and it's pointed kirik, right, which is a short duration I type vowel. Yi. Then we have this letter tav. Right? Makes a T sound, but this is a silent shava because we're following a short duration vowel point. So this one was long because we're following a long duration, or it's vocal, I mean, because we're following a long duration. So this one is going to be silent because we're following a short duration. So the silent shava does what? Closes the syllable. So that gives us the sound yeet. Yeet. Then we have the letter hey. So here where we had a het, this is a hey. You can always look at that front piece. If it's disconnected, it makes an H sound, right? So ha. So we have yit ha. Then we have a lamed. Now, this lamed is not a letter that changes its sound. So since it has the dagesh inside, this little dot, we're going to double it, right? So it's going to be like two L's. So the easiest way to learn how to do this while you're just learning is just draw a diagonal line down through there. And we put an L on each side. So this L is going to go down and become part of the previous syllable. So instead of ha, this becomes hal. Then we'll take the second L and start out our next syllable with it and add this kamatz, a long AH sound, la. So we have hala. Then we have the chaf, and it's pointed wa with a shruk, right? Hu. Yit halachu. Yit halachu. Yit halachu. All right, go over here to our next word. What's that? Okay, so again, we have the yud, right? A Y sound, pointed kirik, short duration I. So yi. But then we have this mem here. And look, this mem has a dot inside. So what are we going to do with it? Just like what we did with this lamed. But instead of it being two L's, it's going to be two M's, right? So the first M is going to go on the end of the previous syllable. So instead of it being ye, it's going to be yim. Then we pick up the second M and the whole M wa, which is a long duration O type vowel. And so that gives us mo. So yim, mo. And then we have the tet, which is a T sound. And it's followed by a wa pointed shuruk, tu. So yimotu. 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 All right, so look here, we have a hyphenated word, right? So let's draw that hyphen in there. What's our first part? Kol, right? So we know that this mark here, this kamatz, we know that it makes an A sound normally. But sometimes, because of grammatical rules, it can make an O sound as well. Okay? So that is called, we call it not kamatz, but it's called a kametz ketuf, right? So it makes an O sound. So when we see the holem wa, we know that that's a long duration O. When we see the holem, we know that that's long. But when we see kametz ketuf, we know that that's a short O. Okay? So you have this kaf, you have an O sound here, and then you have the L sound from lamed. Kol, kol. Okay? So we have yimotu kol. What's the next part? All right, so you have the letter mem, right? So it makes an M sound, and it's pointing cholem wa, so m, o, mo. Then we have this letter samek, right? So it makes an S sound. And it's pointed with what kind of a shva? That's vocal, because it's following a long duration. Cholem wa is long duration. So this becomes a vocal shva. So se, mo se. Then we have the dalet, and it's pointed sere yod. So like EH with an I on the end of it, right? Day. Mo sedei. Mo sedei. Kol mo sedei. Kol mo sedei. And now what's our last word here? Okay, so when we see this straight up line next to this T-shaped mark, that's letting us know you don't have to worry about it. That is, if it's got a line next to it, it's always going to sound like A, right? So we have this aleph. It's a silent letter, but it's pointed with kamatz, with a meteg next to it. So we know that this first is going to be an A sound. Ah. Then we have the letter resh, and it's pointed segol, right, which is a short duration E type vowel, followed by this funny looking guy. All right. So what we've got here is a tzadi, so feet. So this letter here, right, this letter here and that letter there are the same exact letter. It's just that this one is at the end of a word, where this one is the form you use in a word. So there are 5 letters that change their shape when they're at the end of a word. You'll see those in your packet as well. We can always talk about them at another time. So this is going to make a TZ sound. So we have aretz, aretz. Kol mosede aretz. All right, so we have transliterated our sentence, right? We've transliterated our sentence. How's the chat look? Everybody okay? Can people hear me? Okay. Okay, good. All right, so let's go ahead and let's read our sentence together. We have lo yadeu velo yavinu b'chashecha yithalachu yimotu kol mosede aretz. Let's do it again. Lo yadeu velo yavinu b'chashecha yithalachu yimotu kol mosede aretz. All right, so lo, what does lo mean? Lo is a negator, right? So whatever comes after it is what's not going to be done. Okay? So, lo. We know that lo means no or not. It's going to negate the thing that follows right after it, right? So they will not, or will not, yadeu. Okay, so what about yadeu? What do we think that means? Huh? Okay, so the root word is what? yada, right, which means to understand. Okay? So yada means to know, to being is more understanding. Yada is to know. Okay? So yade u. What does u mean? U. Them, they, right? U at the end of a word is always them. Okay? So lo yadeu, will not, or not, will they know. K-N-O-W, not N-O. Okay? So lo yadeu, they will not understand, or they will not know. Let's do it that way. They will not know. All right, so what about velo? Okay, so the wa, the V sound here, it's being used as a prefix, right? And then we also have lo again. So and not. What about yavinu? Okay, so we know that they're not doing something. So let's look at this word yavinu. All right, so we know that. Okay, so at the end we have this u. They. Then at the beginning we have will. So what does that make our root word? Bean. It's bean. So no, that's ben. Bean. No, it's not wine. Okay, bean. Like I said before, that's understand. Being is to understand or to make judgment on something, to judge between two things. Okay, so velo yavinu. There you go. They will not know, and they will not understand. Very good. They will not know, and they will not understand. You can also say they do not know and they do not understand. You can still say that. Okay? It's just that with the yud where it is, I tend to look at that as being a future thing. Okay? Because this happened then and it still happens today. Right? So people didn't understand then, and they don't want to understand now. Correct? So, right, it's kind of a prophetic type thing, okay? They will not know, and they will not understand. What about bachashecha? Very good. So, ba, right? Used as a prefix in. Now, this hey on the end is what? That tells us it's a verb, right? It's an action. So what's going on is we know that there's an action coming, okay? So what does that leave us for a root word here? Chashech, right? Which the root word is chashach, which means dark or darkness, right? So in chashecha, in darkness, okay? So why is it not choshech? Because it's not talking about one person, right? It's chashecha. So because we're talking about they, it's plural, right? So bachashecha. So in darkness. Now, this can be either regular physical darkness or spiritual darkness, okay? But see, that's the thing. These people will not, right? Remember how they said, we won't do it. We will not walk therein. Okay? So they don't know and they don't understand because they don't want to, right? In darkness, all right, so in darkness, yithalachu. They will, okay? So we've got a yud here. Well, we've got a hu at the, we get this u at the end, right? So they. So it's will, and we definitely know it's will here because we've got this tav. And that tav is telling us what? Something that's going to happen. It's a future tense, right? So they will, what's that leave us for a root word? No. Halach. Halach, which means what? To walk. So halacha is the manner in which you walk after. Halach means to walk. Okay? So, yit halachu. In darkness, they're going to walk. Right? In darkness, they will walk. Okay? So, first, they don't know, and they won't understand because they're going to walk in darkness, right? That's they making a choice. All right, what about yimotu? Mot, yeah. All right, so they, ye, will. So the word mot. That's the problem with only knowing one definition of it. Mot, we use the word mot to signify dying. Okay? But it's actually the word met, which is to die. Okay? Mot means to, and this is very close, so it's not wrong. Mot means to slip or to fall. And you know when we talk about somebody, they fell in battle or whatever, okay? So mot means to slip or to fall or to crumble. Okay? So what are they going to do here? They will fall, right? They will fall. Well, yeah, they're walking in darkness, right? They're going to fall. So they will fall. What's going to fall? All right, so the kol means all, right? All what? So we know that the word is mosedei. So what do we have? Do we have root words? Do we have prefixes? Do we have suffixes? The yud could be a suffix because that would mean what? If it was, it would be personal ownership. It's an infix because it's all something. All something of, and we know what aretz means, right? So what's aretz mean? Earth. So we got to figure out most of the day. So we've got of, right? I'm just going to put of in parentheses. So what's our root word? Mosed. Mosed. Okay, so what does mosed means? If mosed means a foundation or a base of something. We're going to say foundations of the earth. So here's the thing. These guys, they don't know. They don't want to know. They don't understand because they don't want to, right? They'd rather do what? They'd rather walk in darkness, okay? Now, the way that the word here is, I'm going to read this is Psalm 82 and 5. Okay? Psalm 82 and 5. And the way that it reads in the King James is, they do not know, neither will they understand. I can get behind that. They walk on in darkness. I can get behind that too. That's what we've got here, right? But the next thing says, all the foundations of the earth are out of course. So all the foundations of the earth are falling, they're crumbling, they're what. But the foundations of the earth have nothing to do with us. We can't change the foundations of the earth. We can't do anything about it, right? However, what was this earth planet? What was this planet created for? It was created to be inhabited. Okay? So here's the thing. These people who do not know and do not understand, they're doing it. Why? Because they don't want to. Are we in agreement with that? Okay, so they're doing it because they don't do it because they don't want to. All right? They're happy to walk in darkness. But here's the thing. Them not following what he wants them to do kind of sets things topsy-turvy. This world was perfect until what came into it? Sin is what? Transgression of the law. So, when humans don't do when we're not doing what we're created for, it sets nature kind of wonky. Look at how things are now compared to what they were back then, right? There's a lot of things that are different, and a lot of that has to do with spiritual repercussions, right? Scriptures say that hell enlarges itself every day. And why do we have so much negativity, nastiness, and all these kinds of, why do we have all that in the world? Because you've got all these, for lack of a better term, evil spirits, right? Or negative energies that are combining, and they're just getting stronger and stronger and more. And that has a way of leaching out into things. So because they don't want to know, and they walk on in darkness, when they die, it causes things to get kind of funky, causes things to get wonky. And so that is why things would be out of course, right? They're not the way they were supposed to be, because this world was created for a particular reason. So because of that, because of their refusal to do what's right, they're not living up to their potential. They're not holding up their corner, as Rebbe would say, right? All right. So let's not be like these folks. That's one thing about this little group. We want to know, and we want to understand, don't we? We're frequent. Father, I don't understand it, but whatever, one day you'll explain it to me. That'd be nice. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, it's really not up to us to understand. That's the whole concept behind the hook, right? We don't have to understand it. We just do it because he said so. Ours is not to wonder why. Ours is but to do or die. Okay, so anyway, Psalm 82 and 5. Let me scroll this up just a little bit more. Okay, good. All right, so let's go to our next word here, or our next sentence. What's our first word? Lo again, right? Lo. So not what? What's this word here? How do we pronounce this? Ira. So we have aleph, silent letter, but it's pointed kirik yod. E, Then a resh, pointed kamatz, with aleph behind it. Ra. Ira. So I'm going to do 2 E's and an apostrophe RA. Does that work? Ira. Lo ira. What's our next word here? All right, so we have a mem, pointed sere, me. Then we have a resh, pointed kirik, with veit behind it. So what kind of shva is this? Silent, right? Because this kirik is short duration. So we have meriv, close the syllable, meriv. Then we have another veit here, and it's pointed cholemwa, so vo, with a tav behind it. Vote, right? Meriv vote. Meriv vote. All right, meriv vote. All right, what's our next word? This little short guy here. All right, we have ayin, silent letter, but it's pointed kamatz, long duration A, with mem sofit behind it. So this letter and this letter are the same. It's just that this one's at the end of a word. So we have am. So lo ira merivot am. What about this next word here? Okay, we have aleph, silent letter, but it's pointed chatef patach, short duration A. Ah. Then we see the mark on the right-hand side. So what's this going to sound like? SH, right? And then it's pointed with segol, short duration E type vowel, and then a resh behind it. Share. So we have a share. A share is a rough word because it can be used in a very, very wide range of uses. Okay, I'm a share. What about this word here? You have a samek, right? Pointed kamatz, sa. Then we have a veit, pointed kirik yod with another veit behind it. Viv. So saviv. Saviv. All right, what about down here? What do we got? All right, so we have a shin. Again, mark is on the right-hand side, so we know we pronounce it SH. With the kamatz, sha. Then we have the letter tav, pointed wa with a shuruk, tu. So shatu. Shatu. All right, what about this last one here? Okay, we have ayin, silent letter, pointed kamatz, a. Then we have a lamed, and it's pointed kamatz with mateg. So we know it's going to sound like an A, right? And then this yud, or this I sound at the end. Lai. So it's alai. It's all alai. Alai. All right, so here's our second sentence. It's a little bit shorter than the first one, but you guys are pros at this by now, so that's why I give you some longer sentences. Well, that's what Alicia tells me. She said, you guys are pros. That's why I have to give you these long sentences. All right, so we've transliterated our sentence, so let's read it together. We have lo ira. So remember, we've got this mateg, right? I mean, not mateg, we've got this makef. So we're going to just run those together. So lo ira merivot am asher saviv shatu alai. You guys are going to like this one. So let's do it again. Lo ira merivot am asher saviv shatu alai. All right? So lo, we know that means no or not, right? It's negating the second word. So what is the second word? Nope. I guess it could in a roundabout way. Well, you're missing a whole nother letter there. You're only grabbing onto this, but you've got 4 letters here. So your first letter is what? Aleph. Can that be used as a prefix? Okay, and if it was, it would mean what? Nope. Aleph, used as a prefix. I will. Now, y'all know this. I will. Yeah, you've been working on this for a while. You should know it. All right. So, I will. So, what does that leave us as a root word? Yareh, which means what? Kim is over there pushing on mom. Yareh, to fear, to be afraid. Yareh. So, lo ira. All right. I will not fear. Okay. Lo ira. I will not be afraid. I'm not going to fear. Right? Lo ira. I will not fear. We got to fear something, right? So what is merivot? It is plural. So if it was a prefix, what would that mean? From. Mem is from. Lamed is to. Okay? So me. I will not fear from. So what does that leave us with? All right? So we have Ravivot. So ot on the end tells us what? It's plural. So Ravav. What does Rav mean? Great or many, a lot, right? So we're going to say merivot. Now, in the King James, it's funny because they assign a lot of numbers to something, right? But in Hebrew, it really doesn't do that. So Ravav, right? An abundance. A lot of. Something too numerous to count. So, how would we translate that? Merivot. I will not fear from an abundance. So he's not going to be afraid of an abundance of what? Am means people. I will not fear from an abundance of people. All right? So I'm not going to be afraid of a bunch of people. Paraphrased, of course, dumbed down considerably. All right? So I'm not going to be afraid of a bunch of people. What about asher? No. That would be key, all right? So asher, like I said, can be used in a wide array of things, okay? So let's leave that for just a second. Let's just leave it. We're going to come right back to it. What about the word saviv? All right, so savav means to surround, right? Savav, to surround or to encircle. So I'm going to put encircle. So asher. I'm not going to be afraid of a bunch of people who, right? We have to link these things because it's the people that are going to be doing the encircling, right? So what would go? So the abundance of people are the ones who are doing the encircling, right? So we have to tie this together. So we use the word who, right? Does that make sense? Those who do something, right? That's what they're doing. They're doing something. What about the word shatu? Shatu comes from the root word. I'm not saying something bad, okay? Comes from the root word sheath. Sheath. Okay? Sheath means to set, to place, to appoint, to array something. Like I take these boxes of Kleenex and I set them up in a pyramid or something, okay? So, shitu. So, what we could say here is who encircle, we're going to put a parenthetical and we know it means to set up, to array, right? To appoint. And set, then in parentheses again, we're going to write themselves because it's the people who are doing it. Does that make sense? Right? They're the ones who are encircling, right? So they're setting themselves. How are they setting themselves? What about alai? Finish the thought. It's on me. Al. It's a preposition, means on. Al. Alai, on me. They set themselves on me, which means that they're doing what? They're attacking me. So you see why they're encircling me, right? Why are they doing it? So they can try to take me out because they don't like what I'm saying. It's just like what we talked about the prophets last night, right? When the prophet came to town, people were afraid of him. And they weren't running to go shake their hand or see what they were running to go find somewhere to hide or some way to do them in. You know what I mean? True prophets were never welcome, okay? So this says, I will not fear from abundance of people who encircle and set themselves on me. So what we've got here is Psalm 3 and 6. Now this may be more familiar when we hear it in the King James, right? King James says, I will not be afraid. I will not be afraid from 10,000s, right? That's what I'm saying. King James attaches numbers to things where Hebrew really doesn't. It's just understood that an abundance can be any number. This number, this medivot, it can be used in the place of thousands, okay? Now here's something else. It can be used in the place of 10,000s. It can be used in the place of millions. It just means an uncountable number. Does that make sense to y'all? It's a huge number, okay? So I will not fear, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me, right? Have set themselves against me roundabout. That's your encircle. So I'm not going to be afraid of, it doesn't matter how many people it is, right? Because the scriptures say, if Yahweh be for you, who can be against you, right? So let him do. It says, better to fear Yahweh, right? Who can kill both body and soul, right? Than just man who can just kill the body, right? So anyway, like I said, this is Psalm 3 and 6. and so I wanted you guys to see the difference between the thought process, the cultural mindset. We don't have to have a number. In Hebrew, you don't have to have a number. You just know that and it kind of shows, this is how I see it. In Hebrew, or in English, right? And the same part, by the same token in Greek. When you have a number, there's a sense of finality there. So if it's 10,000, by the time that you get to number 10,000, you're done. That's it. That's the end of it, right? But with the Hebraic mindset, there's always going to be somebody against you. And we know that from the scriptures. There's always somebody against the prophets. There's always somebody against his followers. There was always somebody creeping in the background against the disciples, right? So the idea is that, it's kind of like the poor. What did Yahushua say? You'll always have the poor. Well, guess what? The scriptures also tell us that if you would live a reverent life, you will suffer persecution. And that persecution's got to come from someplace. And who's it going to come from? It's going to come from family and friends and people you don't even know. Folks who are spying in the bushes watching you walk around the pond. Okay? Just stuff like that. So, but what I'm saying, this is what I kind of wanted to show us, that yes, there is a difference in the mindset. Okay? We had a number, we say, okay, I'm going to be ready up to this point. But in this walk, you got to be ready all the time. That makes sense to y'all? Got to be ready all the time. All right, so let me erase this. Any questions on this sentence? If not, we'll move on to our paleo word here. I'm going to take that silence as a no. So we'll move on to our paleo word here. Okay, so here is our paleo word. Kind of silly looking. All right, so what's our first letter? We have a lamed, right? We have a lamed. What's our next letter here? No, that's a wa. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to use it kind of as a W sound, okay? And then what we have this last one here. That's a nun. All right? So in order to tie these together, I'm going to have another vowel sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a U in here. And that gives us the sound lun. 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 Okay, so what does lun mean? It means to be obstinate. To be stubborn, right? To be obstinate, to be stubborn. So, when we look at the lamed, what do we see here? Okay, so what are we talking about? Right, because being obstinate, being stubborn, being headstrong, being a backsliding heifer, all of those things are what? They're negative. So let's stick with the negative. So if it's a negative, what is it? It's the ox goad, right? And what is an ox goad? It's a nasty, painful stick, right? So the concept, and it's used for correction. So the concept of correction and pain are hidden in this letter. Okay? Got that? So what about the wa? What is it? It's a nail. And a nail does what? It joins things, right? We use it as the word and a lot. Very helpful, very utilitarian word, and. What about nun? Well, let's go with what is it on the positive side? It's life and flashing brilliance and shininess and quickness and all of these things. So what is it on the negative side? It can be death. Okay? Can be death. But let's stay with it on because death is inevitable. Okay? So what do we see on, if we look at it as flashing brilliance on the positive side, it'd be darkness, right? Very good. You are on fire, Sister Lisa. You are a machine today. All right, darkness. Right? So we see correction or pain and darkness. So let me ask you this. Rebbe talked about this last night, and that's what gave me the idea to go with this today. Okay? So we hear a lot about staying the course, right? What else do we hear about? We heard Rebbe talked about doing what? Working your hardest when you're at your weakest, right? You know, working the hardest when you're at your weakest. So the question I have for you is, and you know, we have to judge the scriptures by the scriptures, right? And so let me ask you this. Is staying the course, is working your hardest when you're at your weakest, is that an actual biblical principle? Of course it is. We have so many, we talk about the patterns in the scripture, right? And we know that if we've got 2 or 3 witnesses, that it's a true thing, right? Let every matter be established in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. So we know that that is a true biblical principle, okay? And I mean, you better believe it. Because when you get tired of trying and you get tired of standing up and getting knocked back down, because we know that happens in this walk, right? Has anybody in here ever been knocked down by somebody else? I'm talking about in this walk. Yes, we all have. And who hurts you the worst? Well, it's your family, normally. The ones who say that they love you the most, they're the ones who are going to hurt you the most. Happens every time, right? So when we get it in our mind that we're done, I'm through, right? Like those people of Babel, right? He told them that they needed to go, but what did they do? They didn't scatter out. They stayed right where they were, right? So when we dig our heels in and we refuse to move and we're obstinate, we're like an old donkey, right? Y'all ever seen old donkey? When he don't want to go nowhere, what's he going to do? He's going to dig his heels and he's going to sit down on his rear end, and he ain't going. You can't move him. You couldn't move him with a stick of dynamite. You know, he's not going nowhere. All right? So when we do that, when we refuse to move, we're obstinate, that not only stops us in our journey, right? We all have a journey to complete, right? We got a finish line to get across, correct? And when we do that kind of stuff, it stops us in our journey. But there's something even worse that it does that we don't think about. When we get obstinate and we get stubborn and we dig our heels in and we stop in our journey, what happens? We saw it last night in Deuteronomy 28. So when we stop, what happens? Remember Ribby was talking about putting your hands down? When we put our hands down, what happens? It brings the curse, right? And it actually turns Yahweh into our enemy. Isn't that what he said? So Yahweh now becomes your enemy. The one who loves you the most now becomes your enemy because you're not holding up your end of the bargain. You're not holding up your corner, right? And this came to me while Dad was teaching last night. So yes, that's why I'm right on board with him, because it makes perfect sense to me. And it rings true in my spirit. So I'm just letting y'all know, when we give up, that turns us against the Father. And it makes the Father say, okay, you giving up on me, guess what? I'm going to give up on you. Right? Remember what he told him? He said, because you don't lay it to heart, right? You take my most precious thing and you give up on it, well, guess what? I'm giving up on you, and I'm going to forget your children too. I'm going to forget your whole line. I can do that. Simply because we make a bad decision. We talked about that the other day, didn't we, Mom? You and I were just talking. One bad decision can change everything, right? So it brings that curse. And here's the thing. Were they open and willing in the wilderness? No. If they were, they wouldn't have been marching around in circles for 40 years, right? So they were obstinate in the wilderness, and I have a question for you. What did it get them? 40 years of evil, right? 40 years of pain, misery, and woe. That's what it got them, because they made a choice that we will not. How many times did they say that? He said, I'm giving it to you on a silver platter. But what did they say? We don't want it. We will not. Our souls loathe this light bread. We don't want it. It ain't what we want, so we're not going to take it. So, I want to show you. Got something to say? Say it.
I was going to say, it reminds you so much of, we see this all the time. Scripture says, seek ye the old path,
wherein is the good
way. Mm-hmm. But they said, we will not.
We will not
walk therein. And people now, he's telling you, seek the old path. That's all we're doing, is walking the old path.
That's exactly right.
But people want something new and...
they want it flashy, and they want something entertaining. And
they don't want the old path. So they're doing the same thing. They're saying, no, I will not.
That's right. Then they're making a conscious decision to reject him. They think, oh, I go to church every Sunday. You may, but you're still making a conscious decision to reject him because you're not following the old path. You ain't even close, right? You out there putting up your tree, you ain't even close. You out there doing the trunk or treats, you ain't even close. You over there with your Sunday school and y'all got the little children handing out Valentines, you ain't even close. Right? Not even close. But what I want to draw your attention to is that there is a secondary meaning of this word. You know, I always try to bring you a primary and a secondary meaning, okay? Because the secondary meaning for me is what really gets behind the scenes. This word lun means to do two things: to murmur and to complain. And when we do that, based off of what we learned last night, when we murmur, when we complain, we make ourselves, remember what we talked about? What's so bad about delusion? Because you do it to yourself. So when we become obstinate, when we murmur, when we complain, when we do that, we make ourselves his enemy. He's not the one doing it. We are. Right? They said, we will not walk therein. We will not leave drink offerings and stuff for the Queen of Heaven. We will not. So when we do that, we make ourselves his enemy, and check this out. What else do we do? Well, when we look at our word, we see. When we make him out, when we make ourselves his enemy, when we say we will not, when we complain, when we murmur, when we gripe about his good headship, then you, my friend, you, not him, even though we know he creates it, but you have just invited pain and darkness into your life. So would you rather have light and pleasure, or would you rather have pain and darkness? There's a choice to be made, right? But the thing that we must remember is we do it to ourselves. That's why it's so devious, because we do it to ourselves. Well, I'm going to sit down right here and I ain't moving an inch. Well, guess what? You are inviting more pain and more darkness into your life than you could ever imagine. And that's the same thing that happened, right? All of them except for 4 people of that older generation died in the wilderness. That's not the place they wanted to die, but that's where they died. That's where they fell, right? I'm just going to tell you the way I look at it, and this is where I'm going to end it at. If you invite pain and darkness into your life instead of pleasure and light, in my mind, you are crazy as a loon. What you got, Seth?
So, murmuring and complaining. This is past. This is also past and present. Like if you're complaining about something you've been through or whatever, and you just can't get past it. Because I mean, that also is murmuring and complaining.
Murmuring and complaining. Okay, so it's kind of hard to put into words. If Rebbe's my leader, and he does something that I don't agree with, and I'm here at the shul, right? And I'm smiling all in his face one minute, but the second I get out the door, I'm running him up and down the, you know what I mean? All right? I'm doing that. That's murmuring and complaining against his good headship. Now, speaking of past situations, okay? If I had a past situation and I'm running down the Father because he didn't bring me out of it when I'm the one who put myself in it. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Then that's murmuring and complaining. Okay? I done that. Time to be a man. Let's face up to it, right? And let's get past it. But no, it's his fault. He didn't tell me, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, blah, 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 when all the time the power was in my hand. You know what I'm saying? So murmuring and complaining, why did you bring us out here? You got us. When we was in Egypt, we sat by the flesh pots and we had all the leeks and the garlics and the celeries and the fried chicken, and we had all that we wanted. But did they really have it? It's what we call the Mandela effect, right? Okay? They think that, see, that's the thing. We look at things through rose-colored glasses sometimes. I'm going to tell you what, nostalgia is always perfect. It's always perfect, right? Kim, years ago, you went back to California to take your dad. You guys, and now being from California, we all will talk about In-N-Out Burger all the time. In-N-Out. That's our favorite place. Well, Kim went back to California. The first thing she told me, she said, I'm going to In-N-Out. I'm getting me a double-double. I said, well, I hope it's fantastic. She went back I asked her the next day, how was your In-N-Out? And she said, really wasn't all that great. She said, be honest with you, nowhere near as good as what I remember it being. And that's the thing, nothing ever is. Nothing's ever as good as we remember it being. You know what I mean? That's what nostalgia colors things that way. But like I said, when I go to blaming the Father for something that is my fault, right? Then that's murmuring and complaining. The Father had Moses bring them out of Egypt because he was taking them to a better place. But all they could do was keep looking at Egypt. It was so great. And they were lying to themselves the whole time. Look at Lot's wife. What's the scripture say? Remember Lot's wife, right? Takes her out, takes the family, takes them out of Sodom and Gomorrah, takes them out. But she just can't quite let it go. So she turns around and looks, and what happens? Boom, pillar of salt. See, that's the thing. That's why most of the stuff in the scriptures, it's all cautionary stuff.
Not letting go of something that is that.
When
part
you
of
can't
it.
let go of something, sis, you can't move forward. Okay? I said this to my wife, not about her, but about somebody else that we were discussing. They're having this issue. The thing is, we have to remember, we all go through tests and trials and tribulations. But what do? We take away the beneficial things from that, and we don't dwell on the hurt. Because that hurt anchors us to that place, and we never move from there. Correct? We get tied there and we never move from there. And that was part of the children of Israel's problem. Right? They weren't looking forward. They were too busy looking behind. And it's so easy. Because you've heard the old adage, misery loves company, right? It's so easy for one person to start talking trash and then another joins in and another and so on. It's like that old Well of Balsam commercial, right? You tell a friend, and then they'll tell a friend, and two, so on and so on. You remember that? So that's the thing. When you can't get past that, when you can't move on, it keeps you anchored to that position, and you never get any farther in your walk. And that dissatisfaction from being stuck there leaves you open to doing what? Murmuring and complaining. The biggest trick for not murmuring and complaining is continuing to move forward. I don't know why that's so hard for people to understand. What were you going to say, Seth?
Sister Gabriella wants to know what Strong's number that is.
For Loon? Sis, I don't remember what it is. I'll have to get it for you. I'm sorry. Look up murmuring. Should be 3386 or something. Look up murmuring, sis, and you'll find it. Okay, but I think it's 33 something. But anyway, that's the word lun. And like I said, it means to be obstinate, but it also means to murmur and to complain. That's the reason why I had my, and Kim will tell you, I'm sitting on the couch this morning, right? I had my lexicon, my analytical lexicon out, digging through it at what, 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning? So that's the thing, y'all. If we want to make sure that we don't murmur and complain, all right, you don't forget the things that have happened in the past. Because the things that happened in your past is what makes you who you are in the future. Okay? We don't forget about them, but we don't let them hold us down and anchor us to that spot. We take the good things from that, good memories, right? And we take the lessons that we've learned, and we keep moving forward, because you never know when you're going to come across somebody who has going through that very same thing that you've already been through, and maybe they need they need someone to talk to, or they need a direction, or they need some advice. Exactly. You'll never get to where they are to meet them if you're stuck way back here. See what I'm trying to tell you? It's simple. You know, yeah, life sucks. It does. Things happen, right? But it's what we do after those things happen that make the difference. You got to keep moving, right? He said, "Those that endure to the end shall be saved." Not if I sit down halfway through and I get my feelings hurt and I'm like, I ain't doing it. I'm done. No matter how many times you shook the pastor's hand, you ain't getting nowhere. And you're still going to be sitting there when he comes back. And you ain't going to hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." You ain't going to hear that. But anyway, so let's not murmur and complain. It is scary stuff, ain't it? You got that look on you. Are you griping at me? Are you murmuring and complaining? Are you standing up on the inside? Tiny mommy, you standing up on the inside? It reminds me of that when your dad talking about that little boy at that restaurant. Anyway, so that's going to do it for our Hebrew lesson today. I want to thank everybody for being here with us.